Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're wading into, well, a really fascinating intersection.
Oh, yeah.
The super niche world of heavy-duty fish keeping
Yeah.
and the kind of serious woodworking that has to go along with it.
Right.
I mean, just think about the weight involved here. When you're setting up an aquarium rack for
Uh,
multiple huge tanks, you're not just dealing with hundreds of pounds.
No, you're talking thousands of pounds of static load,
Yeah.
water, glass, all of it.
Exactly. So structural integrity isn't just a nice to have, it's everything. One little failure and you've got a disaster on your hands.
A catastrophic one. And that's our mission today, really, to give you a shortcut to understanding the engineering here. And we're pulling it all from a very specific source, Notes on Fish Keeping, Part 66.
And this source lays out the core dilemma for any DIY builder, right?
It does. It's that choice between what's strongest and what's, frankly, just the simplest way to join two pieces of wood.
So we're going to dissect two methods. We'll look at the novice's choice, the one driven by speed, and then the industry's choice, which is all about physics.
And you'll see how this big structural decision is, funnily enough, influenced by things that have nothing to do with structure, like, garage space and other hobbies.
We really need to distill what the pros are doing, what they've observed, and why the author of these notes, who calls himself an upcoming woodworker, decided to go for simplicity over complexity.
Yeah, they're setting up a very real-world test of whether or not it's all going to collapse.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Our author, in their project, chose the path of least resistance,
The butt joint,
the butt joint.
which is, the first joint anyone ever learns in woodworking. It's the absolute easiest solution because
Okay.
it doesn't need any complicated cuts.
You just take two pieces of wood, butt them up against each other.
And that's it. Then you just rely completely on your fasteners, nails, screws, glue to do all the work.
It's fast,
No.
incredibly fast. But structurally, it sounds weak.
It is, by design. You're putting all your faith in the strength of that little piece of metal or the bond of the adhesive. And when you're talking about hundreds of pounds of water weight that can shift...
The stress is lateral, it's cycling.
Exactly, and that sideways stress is the absolute death knell of the butt joint. It introduces something called shear stress.
Okay, hold on. Shear stress. Break that down for us.
So, to put it simply, imagine trying to slice your screws in half with a giant pair of scissors. That's shear stress. The pieces of wood are trying to slide past each other.
And only the metal shank of the screw is stopping them.
That's the only thing resisting the motion.
And that's the key takeaway for you listening. Failure in a joint like this isn't the wood snapping. It's the fasteners either bending or, much worse, just pulling right out of the wood.
Catastrophic failure. And what's so fascinating is that the author knows this. They understand the vulnerability, but they still choose it.
Why? What's the rationale?
Well, they say they're an upcoming and potentially a novice woodworker unconcerned with aesthetics, so their priority is just pure efficiency. They chose the butt joint because it, and I'm quoting here, eliminates the need to measure and cut additional pieces to join two boards.
So it's a shortcut.
It's an expediency play, totally.
But wait a second. The time you save by not cutting a few joints, that seems so small compared to the absolute disaster of a 500-gallon tank collapsing. The risk seems, it seems mathematically absurd, doesn't it?
From a pure engineering perspective, yes, 100%. But this choice tells you everything you need to know about the novice mindset.
Right.
It's that impatience, that feeling of wanting the project done now, and maybe, just maybe, believing that heavy-duty screws and good glue will be enough to beat the physics.
We've all been there.
Every single woodworker has tried to justify the simple route at some point, and we're seeing it documented right here.
And that simplicity is in such sharp contrast to what the author sees everywhere else. Which I guess brings us to the professional standard.
Right. We need to shift to what they consistently observed out in the real world.
And they say they visited, countless fish stores across multiple states.
Exactly. And this isn't just a random observation, it's universal. When you look at those commercial long-term, heavy-duty racks, you see a completely different technique.
The finger joint.
The finger joint. And the fact that it's used so consistently implies it's not a choice, it's a rule. It's imposed by necessity.
Okay, that sounds way more complex than just driving in a few screws. Can you define what that is based on the notes? And more importantly, why does it fix that shear stress problem?
Absolutely. The source says the finger joint involves cutting interlocking fingers at the ends of two pieces of wood and then joining them together.
So like lacing your own fingers together.
That's the perfect visual. The source even had a picture of a single finger joint, which tells you they're often used in multiples to create this strong woven connection.
So let's talk physics. How does interlocking wood solve the problem of all that water weight?
Well, it completely changes how the load is handled. Remember, the butt joint relies on sheer strength, the screws basically getting sliced.
Right.
The finger joint is a mechanical lock. Because of those interlocking teeth, when the load tries to push the two pieces apart, the fingers press directly into the sockets of the other board.
So instead of the screws taking all that slicing force, the wood itself is bearing the weight.
Precisely. You're converting that destructive shear force into a compressive force. You're squeezing the wood.
And wood is much stronger when it's being squeezed.
Exponentially stronger. Plus, this joint gives you a huge amount of surface area for glue, and that glue is also held under compression. The whole thing starts to act almost like one solid piece of wood.
So the extra labor is basically an investment.
It's a necessary investment in making sure it doesn't fall apart.
That comparison is so important. The finger joint, it needs precision tools, right? A table saw with a special jig, maybe a router setup. But what you get is this incredible mechanical strength.
You're distributing the weight across the wood fiber, not a thin piece of metal.
Which, and this is the interesting part, leads us right back to why the author chose the weaker path in the first place.
Exactly. The structural choice wasn't made in a vacuum. You have to look at the shop logistics. You have to look at what was making that precision work. Well, impractical.
And that's the real-world twist here, isn't it? The author's whole plan for a dedicated workshop kind of fell apart.
It did. The original idea was to do this big, robust conversion of their garage into a permanent woodworking area. And that would imply having access to all those precision tools you need for complex joints.
But that's not happening now.
Oh, it's off the table. And it's because of limited space and a, quote, newfound passion for gardening.
Gardening.
Yep. So now the author is thinking about turning that precious garage space into a dedicated gardening workspace instead.
Which frames this whole project differently. It's now constrained by competing hobbies and just a lack of organized space.
It does. It makes the butt joint rationale so much stronger, you know?
I see. If your whole workshop is shrinking, you don't have the space or the time or even the justification to set up the jigs for these complex cuts.
It changes the entire decision-making process. The butt joint isn't just about being a novice anymore.
It's the only feasible option.
Right. It's about getting the structure built now as quickly as possible and justifying that structural gamble because of practical necessity.
So that brings us back to what's happening in the author's garage right now. This isn't just theory for them. They're running a live experiment.
They are. They're in a holding pattern. They've built it with their butt joints, and now they're just waiting to see if this will work in the coming weeks.
They're literally testing speed and efficiency against proven mechanical integrity.
All while their workspace is shrinking around them. It's a fascinating test.
It really is. So we've successfully charted the knowledge in Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 66. We've compared the quick, shear-dependent butt joint against the stronger, compression-based finger joint.
Which is clearly the industry standard for these heavy-duty racks. The core takeaway is that clear divide between the easiest way and the strongest way, and how it all comes down to how you manage mechanical force.
And the author's choice to sacrifice that complexity for simplicity, all because of space, sets up this real structural drama.
It really does.
And that leaves us and you with a final thought to consider. When you take on any new technical project, there's always a cost to taking the easy way out. We see the consistent, observed industry standard, the finger joint, which requires an investment.
An investment of time, tools, and effort. And then you see the simplest route, the butt joint. So the question is, what's the true cost of choosing that fastest path over the proven engineered one? Especially when the stakes are so high, like hundreds of gallons of water. That's the risky question the author is trying to answer right now over these coming weeks.